My name is John Linden. I'm the CEO of Mythical Games. Today I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing kind of the next generation of games coming, particularly around the system we're built on, which is on top of Polkadot. But just in general, I'd love to talk about kind of where we see that industry heading. So, quick introduction. I'm from the game industry. I didn't come from kind of the crypto industry. I was originally a studio head at Activision Blizzard. So if you ever play a game called Call of Duty, that was some of the work my studio ended up doing. So we made 4 Call of Duties over 5 years, I think, something like that. Had a mobile game company after Activision days. So we had a big game there called Marvel Strike Force, which I think it grossed it was about a $3 billion title. So we really came from kind of that traditional gaming space, and we've seen what's happened over the last 2 decades, and been very fortunate to work on some just amazing IPs. And I think what was exciting about the space and why we entered the space in the first place is we saw big shifts happening in gaming, and a lot of these become very permanent changes to the gaming infrastructure. So the first we saw was this concept of free-to-play. Free-to-play, really transformed the gaming industry over about 10, 15 years. We went from about 100 million gamers a month to now nearly 4 billion gamers a month, so half the world's population, because of the concept of free-to-play, mobile free-to-play, things like that. The second one that has been really, really amazing is the concept of user-generated content. And basically what that did for the industry was really 2 things. One, we ended up having more content than one studio could ever produce, but also we had more stakeholders involved now. We had brands and influencers and gamers themselves would become content creators and became a stakeholder within the game itself. And I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing the next set of transitions fully underway with gaming. And I think these are going to be permanent as well. And I think Web3 is really going to be kind of the mechanism for how these get delivered effectively. So kind of the first one is really the concept of economic tech, tradable assets, ownership. So we've seen a lot of that. I want to talk a little bit about what we've seen working and what's not working. The second one I think is going to be streaming. So if you think about it, I guess the acronym in Web3 would be DPEN, but basically the concept of how games get streamed, how they get distributed. And the third is really how players interact with each other. I think we're seeing some amazing transformations start to happen around social. And I'll go through each of those in just a second here. But the first one, we've seen a lot of iterations. I think some of these have been interesting. Some of them have not been as interesting to me. But we really have seen a lot of iterations in a very short period of time. And I think that's something to keep in mind is we're still pretty early in these days. We saw kind of the OG, this is the one that I think captured a lot of us from the gaming industry. The attention was concepts like CryptoKitties, right? We would have things to where I was never a whale in games. I would spend $30 or $40 in a free-to-play game, and next thing I know, I dropped $600 on freaking 2D images of cats, and I'm like, why did I do that? And it really kind of highlighted the concept of what this tech can do, and what it really becomes. It's no longer just entertainment. It really does become this concept of asset ownership or value creation within the industry. So we've seen a lot of these things happen from obviously what Axie did with the gamified collections, with some of the tradable collections with NBA Top Shot. We kind of entered the space. We had one of the earlier games, we were the first game on Epic Games Store to really start getting mainstream gameplay happening. With NFL Rivals, which was one of our big games, I think that was really one of the first big mass market games. And we've seen now a couple just this year kind of start joining that. And it's really exciting to see games like Off the Grid, NFL Rivals. There'll be a few others that are starting to really amass not quite 10 million players yet, but getting into the tens of millions rather than millions of players we've been in the last year or two. And I think what's most exciting are some of these games on the right. And why I'm excited about those is they're made by very, very accomplished game designers. The first one, Fusion Point, he created a game called EverQuest, if you ever saw that, or H1Z1, or PlanetSide, and he's very prolific in the traditional gaming space. He's working on a new game. Everywhere is looking at doing a Web3 economy. That's the creator of Grand Theft Auto. He did Grand Theft Auto 3, 4, 5, Red Dead Redemption. I mean, he's probably the most successful game maker in the world. He's coming into the space. Matrix Fire, a team from Teamy, which used to do Call of Duty Mobile, they're in the space now. The guys from Words with Friends. You're starting to see real studios get behind these games, and I think that's a very exciting kind of transformation that we're starting to see. And I think the other thing we're seeing now too is we're seeing this concept of how do we deliver to these consumers, right? Because gamers are traditionally not crypto traders, right? They're not financial traders. They're consumers. They think in terms of liquidity. If you look at every game player-to-player economy ever, it's 2 panels, right? It's this is what I want, and this is what I'll give you. It's not bids and ask and floor prices and collection values and gas fees and things like that. So I think what we have to do, and we're seeing a huge change in this already. So we actually had a feature called Quick Trade, and we highlighted a little bit here. I had an animation, but I had to pull out all the animations and videos, so sorry about that. But what Quick Trade it really did for us And what it's doing for, I think, the economies in general now is it allows you to kind of map how gamers trade with this amazing world of Web3. And so what I mean by that is, let's say in our NFL game, let's say I'm trading for Patrick Mahomes, right? Patrick Mahomes might go, I think he goes for $600 or $700 US. Well, there's not a lot of mainstream consumers that are just going to whip out a credit card and put a $600 digital asset on their credit card. It just doesn't happen. Or in-app purchases, you'll get a few, but not very many. And what's exciting though is that we have some that'll do it, right? We have some that'll pay a credit card. We have some that'll pay with crypto, directly. But now we have a concept where I can trade, which is a very, very familiar concept to gamers, right? So now I can put Mahomes on the left side, let's say it's $600, and now I see all my assets on the right side. Now, what's happening behind the scenes now, what we can do in Web3 already is we can start seeing, I think in NFL we have about 50 or 60,000 active bids at any given second. So now we start having a lot of inventory we can pull from. And I can now see all my assets, and maybe, I hope there's no Green Bay Packers fans in the audience, but I'm gonna pick on them. Maybe I wanna get rid of my Green Bay Packers, and I'm gonna select 5 of the Green Bay Packers, and as I do that, they're being priced in real time. And if I have $600 on one side and $600 on the other, I have a free trade as a consumer. So I can hit the trade button, I get my asset, I get rid of my other assets. Awesome, that's how gamers trade. What's really exciting from the Web3 perspective and from the game developer's perspective is that basically what the tech does behind the scenes using Web3 is that we real-time bought from one seller and we real-time sold those 5 assets to potentially 5 different buyers, all in a few seconds. And that is very transformative because what we're able to do now is we're able to mix cohorts together, right? In gaming, there's people that do speculate. There always will be. There's people that farm things. There's people that are whales and they just spend a lot of money. But a majority of players are free. They come in to play the game and enjoy the game. But now you're able to start using Web3 to mix and match all of these audiences together. What's happened for us now, since we launched that feature, our revenue from NFL Rivals went from 20% of our revenue was secondary, 80% was still traditional gaming revenue. This year going into season 2, it's nearly 70% is secondary. So we've been able to really start monetizing all of these users that are just playing in these worlds. And that's been really, really transformative to where we're going. So I want to show a couple of things. This is kind of the concept of quick trade here. So basically the two pieces coming together and being able to collect those transaction fees. So behind the scenes, the Mythos chain, the game developer, Mythical, we actually collected multiple transaction fees off of a free trade. And it's all kosher with Apple, Google. We got it all officially licensed with Apple and Google. It now works with Epic. It's working with Xbox and PlayStation now. So you're able to tap into almost the entire gaming industry with these new concepts. And that's very powerful for where I think the industry's heading into 2025. So just want to really show the scale of what we're starting to see. So we are sitting ourselves at roughly about 6-7 million wallets already from consumers. I know Gunzilla is out there. I think they're sitting on something similar now. I think those are still testnet wallets, but they'll be able to convert a lot of them in when the game goes live. But I think just on games we're starting to see already, I think we're going to see us grow over the next 6 quarters to about 63-65 million wallets just from games already in the pipeline. That's starting to get real. That's starting to become a real number. And then we also have a product to where we're now having other studios start to build on us, and we're starting to see their projections as well. So I think there's a real path now to having well over 100 million wallets in one chain from gamers, not bots, not made up accounts, not programmatic, but actual consumers tied back to actual mobile phones or console devices. So this is starting to get real, and I think that gets exciting. I was going to highlight just a couple just real quick, and I think the reason I want to highlight this was a couple stats that we've seen that are really, really powerful. So this is our game, NFL Rivals. This is kind of fun. I took this 2 days ago in Kansas City. So, the Kansas City Chiefs now are actually promoting a Web3 game in the stadium, which is awesome. It's also my hometown, which makes it even more special. But it's really great. I mean, this is actually, I think it was Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago. Literally, they had a Web3 game that was being broadcast during the replays, right? So we're starting to get into that mainstream culture, which I think is exciting to see. This is probably my favorite stat, though, and I'm very proud of this one because we came up in this game with a Web3 game, and everybody was like, "You're going to get bombed. Gamers hate NFTs. This is going to be terrible. You're going to end up with this, review bombed game." But we're coming in against a 37-year-old incumbent, right? Madden has been around for 37 years. I hope that doesn't make anybody feel old, but 37 years Madden's been in market. We came in with our first year, and we actually outranked them by the user ratings themselves. So Madden's sitting at a 4.7. We're sitting at a 4.8 now. This one I just had to add because this is fairly new, because Google refreshes every year, so this is the new stats. Obviously, they're bigger than we are still. but their game is rated a 4.4 on Google, and we're rated a 4.6. And I think that's a really critical time to kind of evaluate that this is going to work. This Web3 is going to work with mainstream consumers, and we're seeing it work. They're liking it. In fact, they're liking it. They're reviewing it even better than the incumbent games. So the other reason I want to highlight a game called Nitro Nation. This is the first game that was being built on our platform, so this is not by us. But what's exciting about this is the same concept. This game is actually built on a franchise already that's been around for a few years. So this is the new version of their game. I think the last game was called Dragon Drift or something like that. But this game had 85 million players on mobile, and now we're bringing games like this into the ecosystem. This is a lot of wallets starting to be created. It's also a lot of people that are being introduced to these concepts for the first time. And I think that's a big opportunity for the industry in general in terms of kind of where does this go. So this is the Dead Mouse actually did a promotion at a party for the game, which was I missed it, but it sounded like it was fun. Blanco's another example. You know, what we've seen already and where we've gone in a very short amount of time in this industry. We originally released this game on PC. The game had about 1.5 million players on PC. This is the first game to ever get released by Epic Games Store. I think there's now about 120 games that are being submitted into the Epic Games Store. So we've gone a long way from I think we were the first one in late 2021, early 2022. Now there's 120 games already starting to kind of go through these distribution channels. And these games are great. I mean, we're starting to bring it to mobile. We actually think this game on mobile can probably see 30, 40, 50 million people. So we're in that phase now to where we've had enough time as an industry to start to mature. We're having real gameplay. We're having multiple studios that are actually getting good attention from the mainstream public, which is awesome. This one that everybody loves to show. I had to show this off real quick. This is I'm excited about where we're kind of heading with a game like this because this is the first instance I think of a Web3 IP, an IP that started off as Web3 that actually can go very mainstream in gaming. So we partnered up with Pudgy Penguins. We're working on a game with them right now. It's super adorable. These little characters and NFT pieces are gonna go really well. We've done a lot of gameplay tests. It's really grabbing a lot of attention already, which is awesome. And we announced this last week with Pudgy. And I was gonna snap a quick shot of the gameplay, but you can see it's real gameplay, real games happening here on kind of where we're heading. The last one I'm going to give you a little bit of tip off, but we're very excited. I was hoping to announce it today. We missed it by about 2 weeks, but we are going to be announcing another major game in the sport genre. And I think what we're excited about this is, again, this is that continuation of where Web3 is going in a very short period of time. So I can't reveal what the game is yet. It's another sports title. What I can say is that if you look at NFL is about 25 million players a year. We got to about 6 in our first year. The incumbent in this game, in this category, has 500 million players every single year on their game. And we have a new version of this game coming, so fully Web3 again. So we are now entering territories as a collective industry. I literally think we will see well over 100, maybe 200 million people joining in the next 12 months into this ecosystem. So things are making very rapid improvements, which is exciting. So I want to talk a little bit about Mythos. Mythos is not just Mythical. Mythical is one of the partners. But these are the companies that have joined Mythos recently. And I love seeing this. This is kind of our NASCAR slide. These are all pretty big names, either in the East or in the West, right? Some people might not know them from the West. Groups like Line or Netmarble or Come to Us, these are juggernauts in the East. Everybody's starting to come together. Bandai Namco, that's one of my favorites with Pac-Man, you know. So these are like real studios that are really thinking about the space and coming into the space in a very big way. So what I want to show here is that every talk around gaming has been very much focused around marketplace. And I think where we're heading is not just marketplace, right? The concepts I mentioned before around distribution, around social is going to become a very large concept here. Oops, this one here. So social, I think, is an area that you're going to see a lot of more investment in. I think you'll see a lot more companies jumping into this space. But the idea of the next version of Discord, right? Discord has nearly 200 million daily players, or daily users in that. I think we're going to start seeing some big changes happening. Mythos is actually partnering up. We announced an early partnership with like an FSL, which makes the game called Step and Go. They have about 5 or 6 million players in their ecosystem. We have about 5 or 6 million in ours right now. But basically, it's the opportunity now to come together from a decentralized social opportunity. And I think there's going to be things like community tournaments, right, that is going to drive this into a whole new level, to where now players can come in. No matter how many live ops or live events you try and do in a video game, the community always has more ideas every time. So what this allows players to kind of come up with their own. They can basically have a smart contract. They can come up with what the rules are. We're also seeing a lot of interest around sponsors, right? How do people get into games? How do they be associated with video games? Maybe they're not directly in the game themselves. So you could have content partners, you could have brand partners that are actually throwing these events using the Web3 architecture behind the scenes. And I think this is going to be a very, very powerful opportunity of where we go. And then the last piece I want to kind of show, the other big piece that we really, really believe in heavily, and there's not a lot of work being done in this area quite yet, but cloud streaming is definitely the future of games. And it's something that the industry has been trying to figure out in general. The challenge with this is it's incredibly cost prohibitive, but it will be coming, right? If you think about it right now, if consumers want audio, it's on demand. If they want video and movies, it's on demand. You want a video game, you have to download 80 gigabytes and hopefully your hard drive doesn't fill up. And then the next time you log in, it's probably a 3 gigabyte update, right? It's very archaic compared to what other forms of media have taken on. And the reason for that is that it's this little device called the GPU, right? So the GPUs are required for every game. You can't really shard or multitask on a GPU. It's a dedicated one-to-one. And they're really damn expensive, as people have. I've seen a lot of companies out here basically trying to kind of tokenize GPUs because they're such a big asset for AI, for mining, all that type of stuff. So you can do it now. Stadia tried to do it. I mean, Google is one of the biggest companies in the world. They tried to do it. They weren't making good economics on it. Xbox and NVIDIA are probably the only two that have been able to do it. One is Xbox is just literally throwing tons of money at it. I'm not sure if you've ever used the Xbox cloud system. It's literally racked up Xboxes in a data center. That's it. So one person uses it. When they leave, somebody else uses it. It's a very inefficient process. NVIDIA obviously makes the chips, so I think they have a little bit of a subsidy that they're able to do. But overall, it's very cost prohibitive. In fact, the data right now is it costs about $2.50 an hour to use a GPU in the cloud. So if you wanted 1 million people in your game right this second, it would cost you a whopping $2.5 million an hour just to pay off the hardware alone. So it's just not very efficient at this point. So, one thing we've been looking at, and this is a tech that we actually did acquire a while back, is there's new tech starting to come out. And I think this will not only redefine cloud gaming, but I think Web3 will be leading the way in something like this. So the idea behind this is that what if you can not use cloud GPUs, you can actually use the GPU sitting on your mobile phone, sitting in your PC and your Mac already. If you can use that and do the edge, so you're running the game in the cloud and you're basically using the GPU on the edge, you can actually avoid having those costs. And so this is what this type of tech does. And it's actually starting to work pretty well. So it's still a little early days, but we've actually been able to get games running now full high definition, nothing installed on the machine at all. And we can run it at effectively the same bandwidth as Netflix runs. So if you can run a high definition Netflix stream, you can basically stream an entire game. And not only that, we've seen there's a lot of interest in Web3. So why would there be interest in Web3? Why would we want to lead with Web3 in a tech like this? Well, you can start doing really amazing things. If I can jump from game to game, I can jump to any 3D experience I want to see next. You still would have to go back and log in. You still have to go back and add your credit card, right? But if Web3 can start controlling identity and letting your identity flow between these 3D experiences, and your assets are coming with you, and your currency is coming with you, it truly does become kind of the basis of a 3D internet. So I think that things like this are going to be another big investment coming into gaming, into Web3. So it's not just to me about the marketplace tech. The marketplace tech is great. We're already seeing, I think, collectively about $1 billion a year being transacted. I think next year that'll double or triple. I think social will wrap that, but I think tech like this is really where we see coming next. And this has to be done by a Web3 infrastructure, and it literally unlocks a decentralized 3D internet. So we're very, very excited on where this is heading. We're starting to see a lot of companies, my clicker stopped working here. Our goal is to have this live. We are going to be putting this on Polkadot. I'll tell you why in a second. But we are working through this right now. We have several companies already testing this already, and it's actually working quite well. There is this concept of metaverse. I usually have a demo. I started doing a demo of this, and unfortunately I had to cut the video. But what's really exciting about this is there's actually tech now to where you can walk from one game engine real time into another game engine without ever leaving the client. I can literally move from game experience to game experience. And again, the concept behind that is that if I have decentralized identity, and my identity instantly goes from one game engine and one company into another game engine to another company, that becomes a very powerful conduit to move people between these 3D experiences. So the tech actually does work already. I'm happy to show a demo if anybody wants to see it. But these are the types of things I think we get really excited about the next generation of games, right? Once now you have games that are distributed differently, they're interacted socially differently, and they're monetized differently. And all that is pretty much has to be done through this Web3 architecture. So overall, I don't think we've really seen a dominant game chain yet. And I think this is one of probably my frustrations and probably a lot of people's frustrations. In fact, I've been in the industry for a while now. I'm one of been longer in the industry than other people. But what's interesting is from the gaming perspective, there's always been, this is the chain that's going to win, right? And if you actually chart that out since 2018, I think we've seen almost every chain is going to win at some point, right? So originally EOS, then Wax, then Ethereum. I think Polygon had a nice run for a year or two. Solana's up there right now. Avalanche is now kind of the king. But I actually think what we're seeing right now, I think where we're going to see this shift is we're going to, to me, the mantra here is follow the users, follow the players. Fundamentals will matter in this space. It just will. Where the players drive activity, and I'll show why in just a second here, where they drive that activity, they drive activity differently than crypto traders. They drive it differently than DeFi. And if you follow where those patterns are, you'll see where the chains will win. So I think we're entering into an era to where the chains that control the players are the chains that are going to win long term. So why is that? So two things. One, I get a question all the time. Why do we choose Polkadot? Well, I think Polkadot's very interesting for a couple things. One is that, they actually can handle a lot of the TPS we're already seeing. So we're higher, I think right now, Mythos does on steady state about 25 transactions a second already. And we only record sales, and mints, that's it. And we're already seeing kind of 25 TPS already. If you look at some of the chains already, that would actually max out several of the chains already where they're at. So we do have this issue. And in fact, the funniest one I've looked at is if you really want to look at scale, if you think about like a Call of Duty, this is now, I'll date this a little bit. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was running Call of Duty. We saw about 1.8 million games a minute played. So 1.8 million games. If we just took a record of that and we just recorded to the chain, match started. That's it. All we just said, match started. I think it comes out to about 1,800 TPS, something like that, or 1,500 TPS. So that would basically take out almost any blockchain in the world right now, just recording a match started in Call of Duty. So that's the volume we could start seeing. And most chains are not ready to handle that. We are starting to see some of them. Solana is actually doing pretty well. I think they're one you could probably back right now on a game. Avalanche, we'll see. I think they have a good opportunity. But some of the other chains just aren't there to take on any type of load around games. The other thing I think that we think is very fascinating within the Polkadot ecosystem is this whole concept of parachains. Now, there's some other people now starting to do super chains and app chains and things like that. That becomes very, very powerful for a game company, right? There's a lot of things you want to basically record on. There's a lot of things you might want to do that's not shared architecture. And I think that's been very, very powerful and allowed us to get a lot of kind of growth very quickly. Also, I think there's a lot of great applications. I think we're going to start seeing an era to where chains can start really talking to each other. Right now, it seems like it's mostly bridging, that people are kind of bridging assets back and forth. But I think we're going to start seeing real transactions happening. And the architecture they have there, I think, is really fascinating. I think it's really great to where they have another chain right now dedicated to gift cards, right? They want to do gift cards. We have the ability to tap in so gamers can now redeem sales for Apple gift cards and spend more money in games, right? Those are real use cases that become very powerful when you have chains like this starting to talk together. And then lastly, if you've been following this whole concept of Jam, I think Jam is really important to where we're heading as a gaming company because it is the next generation architecture, right? They're really not focused as not a DeFi chain anymore. It's really this, any decentralized application can be built. And I think that becomes very important, right? Maybe not less important if you're just building marketplaces, but if you start thinking about a decentralized infrastructure around 3D internet or decentralized social, that's where the new tech kind of becomes very, very important. So we're quite excited on where this is going. We're quite excited to see what the opportunities are. And honestly, I think the next 12 months in gaming with us, with other companies in general, are going to be just a pretty big revolution of what we've seen so far. So we are getting there. And I think the last slide, one last slide here. So this is that, I want to kind of, I guess the last slide here was really to talk about one interesting aspect we've seen from consumers, right? So consumers, as I mentioned, are not necessarily DeFi traders. They trade and they interact differently. So this is we actually put out some public data last week, and this is now updating every single day. So if you want to look up more information, it's Mythos Foundation / it should be a / analytics, sorry, not that analytics. But the idea here that's really interesting, and the reason we want to put this out there was to really highlight what we're seeing from this consumer behavior. So a couple things. If you look at the top left there, the green is what players and NFL rivals right now are buying in Myth every single day. A lot of times they do it in the game themselves through in-app currency. Sometimes they're doing it, through on-ramps. But they're basically buying a lot more than they're selling. The red is what they're selling. So that's how much they're withdrawing out of their wallets. I think it comes out to, for the year so far, we've seen only about 24% of consumers have taken any money out of their wallet. 76% of that money stays in the ecosystem. It's very, very different than DeFi, right? Somebody's didn't make a 1% return and they're going to flip it over here and try and make more money over here. They're literally buying because they want to have currency in their accounts. They want to have stored value. So if you see that blue, that's basically the aggregate stored value we're seeing from these consumers. And every single month, it's just climbing and climbing and climbing. That's one game. So as we start adding more data into the system, you'll see some of that happening. Now, what are they doing with this? Well, they're basically spending over and over and over and over, right? So they don't really care what the token price is, to be real honest. They're basically coming in and they'll buy at 20 cents, they'll buy at $20, because at the end of the day, they want $100 to buy their favorite NBA player, to buy their favorite NFL player, to buy a gun in this game. They really are agnostic to price, which is actually a really interesting opportunity from the ecosystem. So what they're doing is they're spending back into that economy. And you can see here on that chart, that second bar is actually just October and November. So already just 5 days into November, we've already outpaced all of what last quarter did on this chain. And I think that's, again, shows the growth. This is one game, and you can see every single month there's more and more transaction volume as more people join these ecosystems. We've now amassed about 6 million wallets. You can kind of see from the season 2 and from our migration in the chain, it's really taking off. There's a lot of consumers joining. But the top part here, the gas fees, is really where I think it starts getting really fascinating. Our gas fee structure is so low right now, and a lot of chains are seeing that right now. And I think everybody's still trying to balance what should those ideal gas fees be. But what we're seeing now is, I think right now with the games we have, the games that are coming already that we signed that'll be out next year, we'll probably see 4 to 5% of total supply burned just from consumers, right? So basically the loop we're seeing, consumers are buying irregardless of price. They're generating a ton of transaction fees, which is generating a lot of gas, which is burning that gas. And that's a pretty powerful mechanism. And I think kind of gaming systems, gaming ecosystems that identify this are going to see a really pretty amazing cycle, right? You end up having deflationary supply against the consumer base that'll buy regardless of price. And then the final piece we are going to be adding a staking component as well, so that you can actually start earning rewards over that. So I think gaming in general has a cycle, a tokenomics cycle that we haven't quite, I don't think anybody's quite nailed it yet, but I think we're heading there very quickly as an industry that will create this cycle that's going to be very, very fruitful for anybody kind of investing or staking behind the security, but also for the gamers themselves. So super excited on where this is going. I hope this helped a little bit. Like I said, this is some of the stuff we're seeing. Like I said, we did join the Polkadot ecosystem. It's a little bit of information about us if you have if you want any more information, but feel free to reach out. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.